Alright, not too much to say here. Just here on patch 0.10. Now before the rework, the Venezia was a silly cruiser. And now after the rework, it's probably still a silly cruiser. So let's just see how silly it is with its 15 rifles of semi-armor piercing 203mm. Carrier in the game, but the Venezia actually has quite impressive anti-aircraft armament, just a little short-ranged. And we have our creeping smoke consumable, of course, our full speed smoke to get away, 3 destroyers to pound with our semi-armor piercing, and not too much in the way of armor. So it should be a fairly good game spawning on a flank, which is ideal for Venezia, which is an excellent flanking cruiser. So we'll see what can happen. Now with speed flagging, you see me encroaching on almost 38 knots. The Venezia is of course extremely swift. Now heads up, we have a Yamato and a Thunderer. I'm gonna already start to bias inward. Oh, gearing spotted very briefly, but I'm not brave enough to take that snapshot with just the 2 rifles, or 2 turrets available. I'm gonna get my Venezia into position. Now the Venezia is, incredibly long and thin, and presents a relatively large target lengthwise, but very slim target in profile. Now semi-armor piercing on a relatively flat target like this Thunderer. Okay, I'm clicking my rifles, but it wasn't firing. Could be a bit of a ping issue. Didn't see if I had a ping spike there. Okay, based on where my shells were landing, which is nowhere near the Thunderer when I clicked, I assume that was just a ping spike. Which is unfortunate because I've given away my position for basically nothing, but Moskva pushing in. Now he's fairly angled, which should defeat most sap, but the thing is, with Venezia sap, that at longer ranges the plunging angle of the sap shells actually allows it to penetrate when you really think it wouldn't. Such as how you can see here, 4 ricochets, but still 2 penetrations for an easy 3600. Zhao over there, which is a ship that basically got invalidated by the existence of the Venezia. I'm gonna pop my spotter. Now you can see I have 6 charges left. I'm taking that perk right now, just to get the extra charges, and to reduce the cooldown. Don't need that much uptime on my Venezia spotter. Trying to land shells onto that Moskva deck. That Zhao is actually fairly broadside, so quite attractive. Obviously, I would want to hit a destroyer where possible. I'm gonna keep harassing that bow in Moskva, and I'm gonna turn myself around so I can take a more aggressive position. Make use of that 37 knots of speed. Now I'm not running concealment module. I'm actually running rudder. I am taking concealment expert as a skill, so you can see 15.8 is my detectability. Gearing appears to have gotten itself into the cap. My Shimakaze going around the world. Player base has not improved at all with the rework, so if you were hoping that it might entice some of the more experienced players to come back to the game, you can think again, unfortunately. Salvoing out at that Moskva, currently not inflicting too much in the ways of damage. A little better there, you can see that sap alpha quickly bringing us up to 20k in short order. He's fairly static, so I'm just going to take this shot from behind relative cover. Yamato and Thunderer are at significant range, probably to make use of their Deadeye. So there's nothing really that can threaten us. Fire one more time. And now, since my Shimakaze is not being very cooperative, I am going to close on the cap personally. Tartraverse is relatively sluggish, audacious bombers coming in, but I'm not too concerned about that. Moskva is in a pretty precarious position. My team is pressuring him quite a bit. Gonna expose my broadside just to lob some shells. Oh, there's that gearing, but I did just fire at the Moskva. Let's see if I can get my turrets to turn quickly enough to get a punish. I'm not really scared of that Thunderer, even with his potential Deadeye. But now the target I want is the gearing. Even just one shell dealing a very hefty 1000 here. Gonna finish off this Moskva, he's trying to slip away. Save the rear guns for this gearing, who is now turning in. Get my range extension. Fire off my rear guns at the gearing. Another 2 hefty penetrations. Republic at rather close range. 4000 there. I'm gonna disengage myself with the smoke screen now. I do have a 10-kilometer smoke firing penalty, so I do have to be careful. I'm just gonna wait for all my rifles to come to bear. And in spite of my enormous length, I can actually quite easily turn inside of this as a combination of my relatively short rudder shift, high speed, and responsive rudder. This guy's gonna take quite a bit of damage from the looks of it. I'm gonna hold my fire, however, because as I said, 9.9 smoke firing penalty, and his 431s do overmatch any 30mm sections. He's declining to fire, so I'm just gonna fire at this point. Go for that alpha damage. Oh, don't quite manage to get a kill, which is a shame. Venezia does actually benefit from picking up kills. Nice broadside Vermont here. Oh, destroyer. Dodging in short order there, just by holding down on the brakes a little bit. Zhao harassing me somewhat. I'm fairly visible, but the Venezia is in fact the ship that invalidated Zhao in the meta, more or less. Thunderer firing high explosive. Definitely irritating. If the shells hit me, they will set me on fire more than likely, but I do manage to dodge out with a little bit of ruddering. It's a Minotaur in there. Now my shells are extremely fast in the Venezia, so let's see if we can get some harassing fire. My smoke's not up for another 2 minutes or so, and my carrier is in danger of being harassed by that Harugmo, so I'm actually going to glide over and intercept. Harugmo's already opening fire, probably as AFT, or whatever the new AFT is called. You can see the forward gun angles on the Venezia are quite impressive. Now he's pretty heavily armored, but Sap Alpha really doesn't care as I put 10,000 damage into him. How could you continuing to take damage? He's reversed. He's actually sitting still. So I'm actually going to try and slam him, see if he reverses in response. He's still just sitting there. 15 shells on a fairly large target. Get aim a bit too far back. I'm now under fire. My Hakuryu is probably deceased at this point from not having paid attention to the game state. I would like to torp, but my Hakuryu is obviously in the way. He's deceased now. Just dump those. I'm actually going to dump onto the Minotaur. Pretty nice salvo there. Make use of the Venezia's nimbleness. To continue to harass our erstwhile targets. Against an angled battleship, the sap much less impressive, unfortunately. I have my smoke, and I do have an expert loader charge. This is quite dangerous. Can I snap the shot? We'll see if he's paying attention. Shells look pretty good, but he does angle in time to avoid most of the armor piercing. torpedoes actually find home onto the GK. And now I'm gonna re-engage at this point. Can't kite forever. Venezia is an excellent kiting cruiser, but in terms of the game state, it is required that I re-engage in order to participate. Still have 4 heals, so I'm quite healthy. Just need to make my game impact felt. Have my spotter back up. I just need spotting on that Minotaur, and maybe I can put some holes into him. But first, we're gonna get this GK out of our way. Pop my Sansonetti's enhanced reserves. And now at this point we're being stalked by the Harugmo. But of course, we are quite a formidable force. I'm guarding the cap from him more or less. Just gonna make sure I keep cruising. Now I'm not sure where he went. Minotaurs entered into the cap. I'm actually gonna pop my smoke here just to disengage briefly. Looks like there's a Yamato there. Oh, that Harugmo gave himself away. He got a bit frightened, perhaps. Eight sap shells into him. Should have dented him fairly heavily. Oh, he dares to fire. Definitely not the wisest, considering I can use minimap and his tracers to kind of guess where he's at. 10 sap shells and a dead Harugmo later. Looks like it's a radar Minotaur. Thunderer continuing to be absolutely worthless. Radar does end, however. And I should be able to use this Harugmo's smoke to slide in. Now he has hydroacoustic and I don't. However, I'm hoping that he will have used it. Going to try and make use of smoke here. See if I can catch him off guard. See if I can snap that armor piercing. Only one citadel, sadly. We switched to sap now because he's definitely going to angle. He has much higher DPM than me. He's going to minimize the damage by angling. Quick 9,000 there, but his super heal quickly pulling him out of kill range. Have to be almost perfectly angled to mitigate the damage. Looks like he beaches. Pop my heal. Fire again. And he's still spotted, but I'm not. 5 sap shells. See if we can finish him with another reload cycle. Now obviously my team is losing. So not the greatest. I know he's right about here. If he's reversing. So I'm just gonna blind fire, so nothing to lose at this point. Do manage to hit 2 shells. Gonna wait for the reload before we creep out. Oh, we're spotted now. 5 seconds. He's trying to limp away. Don't want him to do that. Gonna anticipate he turns in towards the Thunderdome, the A cap over here. But the Yamato does manage to get that snapshot before he disappears. So there is something. Now 3 ships left to 5, including our missing carrier, means we are still quite significantly behind, but you can see the Venezia still racking up a very large sum of damage thus far. Spotted now by my 15-8 detection. Yamato with eyes on me. My smoke is ready in 18. He doesn't appear to be paying too much attention. Just gonna start by lobbing some torpedoes at him. 13-5 range. I know there's the Audacious, but it's only a couple of torpedo bombers, so I'm gonna ignore them for as long as possible. You're inside my rather intense AA aura now. And we're gonna commit to our evasive maneuvers. See if we can dodge this. The Venezia has excellent handling. At this point, just gonna commit to a smoke screen. Pop my heal, still one more. 30 seconds and now we charge. Now we did dump our tube, so we have the tube back in 20 seconds. So not too worried about that. As long as we hold our fire, we will be fine. Gonna try and get onto the other side of him. Bomber's in the area. He's blind firing. Gonna try and cross his T. 10 seconds left. Gonna switch to armor piercing at this range. 1 second. And I'm not sure we have the punching power to punch this, but we will have to try. We in fact do not. But his turrets are on the wrong side, which means we'll get to put another AP salvo into his butt. Okay, his belt armor's too thick. Rather tragic. I'm just gonna circle around him. He can't quite keep up with his turret traverse. Might get use out of this torpedo. And that's gonna be a quick finish. Some battleship shells coming in, but you can see without allied spotting, the Yamato has trouble doing anything at all to me. Down to our last heal. Now this turn looks a bit tight for a ship of the Venezia's size. That's not so bad. Continuing to trim planes. Gonna burn for a little bit. Don't have my DCP. Short range AA shredding that squadron, however. Gonna hold off on my damage control. Let's see if I can short this. Not quite. Gonna pop a heal now at this point. He's pretty angled, but the semi-armor piercing doesn't really care. Resector. And we're actually just going to hold in this position as close to him as possible. Shooting that semi-armor piercing into the bow of the Audacious. Hopefully he doesn't set a fire. If he sets a fire, he kills us. If not, though, we are going to Shrek him pretty hard. 15 out of 16 shells. Oh, sector a little early. As long as I get myself started with my propulsion unit, should be just fine. And that's a Venezia kill on a carrier. Just have to outrun the torpedoes. Note that British torpedoes are actually slower than the Venezia, quite literally at this period. And my Yamato is actually contesting, so if he can get something done, we might be able to win this game. The Zao can obviously chase me. Oh, we do lose the Yamato, however, so that's going to spell the end of our game, but still 6 digits. So I'm not too angry about that. But still, you can see the Venezia is quite the monster. Gonna finish up at 310. And this is a low DPM ship by all accounts. So, yeah, looks like the captain respec did not affect this absolutely disgusting ship whatsoever. So on a loss, by the way, I am fully flag stacked, but I am assuming my base experience will be quite high, 310,000. 254 shells fired, 6 torpedo hit strikes, 15 planes shot down, 4 incapacitations, 4 actual kills, 3 floods, 2 citadels, 1 assisted capture, 38 secondary hits, and 2 spawning ribbons. Team score wise, a nice 2,532 on the losing team, just slightly shy of the enemy Minotaur. So if we were on the winning team, multiply by 1.5. So as you can imagine, an extra 1,250 or so puts us to about 3,700 on a victory. A fairly solid performance. Now, the Venezia, of course, mostly using sap damage. Fair amount of torpedoes landed this game, which is impressive. And most of our damage done to a couple of different ships, but that Harugumo, you will note, died quite readily to our basically 2 blind fire salvos after he made the mistake of smoking up in front of us and firing. And of course with the flags fully stacked like so, even on a loss with 2,500 base experience, quite respectable. So 1.7 million credits and 65,000 commander experience to our name. Now, as a result of the captain rework, we unfortunately do not have a fully spec'd captain anymore. My former fully spec'd 19-point Venezia captain is now just a, well, 19 out of 21 points Venezia captain, which is obviously a bit of a disappointment. But it is what it is, but very spec'd for a fairly unoriginal captain spec, with gun feeder, which is expert loader, into priority target, into superintendent, into concealment, followed up with adrenaline rush and expert marksman. And then, because the Venezia does not really care about her detectability, just penalize my detectability once more by taking the heavy HE and sap shells. And in this case, I'm taking Eye in the Sky with my last 2 points to top off my 19-point build. Do note, however, that if I had a full 21, I probably wouldn't have bothered with the spotter plane, and I would just take RPF radio location to round off my 21-point build. Anyhow, there's probably no topping that game in particular, and that was, well, it was still definitely an above average game. It's fairly representative of Venezia, considering I have not played this ship in a significant period of time. This ship is an extremely powerful cruiser, one of the premier tier 10 cruisers for sure. So I can't recommend it enough. It's extremely well armored, 50,000 hit points, and you will note it has a significant 40mm icebreaker, 30mm deck, 30mm side, 40mm outer belt, spaced armor. Actually formidable AA defense at 540 continuous average damage. Now it's short-range self-defense AA, but still very adequate for defending herself, and the Venezia is a very selfless ship. Some nice utility with 13.5 kilometer range torpedoes. They are slow, but good range. And an excellent rudder shift time of just 8.1 seconds. Fairly tight 760 meter turning circle. Very, very powerful propulsion unit with 240,000 horsepower and a insane top speed of 38.4 knots without any speed boosts. So Venezia is definitely a monster of a ship. Highly recommend. With that said, that's our 0.10.0 Venezia. Not too much to say. I personally find the Captain rework to be a bit of a exercise in futility. Really, not too much changed. Ships builds are still kind of cookie cutter in my opinion, so I don't really know what they intend to do. The Captain rework definitely still needs more reworking, shall we say, before it comes anywhere near their intended goal of giving some more variability to Captain builds. But yeah, can't say much more than that. That was the Venezia monster game, and I hope you enjoyed. I will catch you all later. Cheers.